You are the first author.
Member?
Yeah.
I guess I have two bills. I'd like to take up whichever is your pleasure first.
Why don't we start with the first one?
994?
Yes.
Madam Chair and member, today I'm presenting Senate Bill 994, which requires the Secretary of State to reimburse counties for elections to fill state and federal legislative vacancies. This measure is very similar to AB 119, a bill I authored in 2007, which was approved by this committee and signed into law by the governor. However, AB 1977 sunsets January 1, 2008. Sunsetted. 2008. Since 2000, there have been 15 elections conducted to fill legislative and congressional vacancies. According to the California State Association of Counties, special vacancy elections totaled more than $8 million in 2009. The governor proposed $68.2 million in the 2010-2011 budget to reimburse counties for the 2009 statewide special election. To date, counties have yet to be reimbursed. Elections to fill legislative and congressional vacancies add significant general fund expenditures to local governments. County election costs are funded by the county general fund. Unscheduled elections cannot be anticipated far enough in advance or consolidated with other planned elections. Costs cannot be determined and often contribute to overextended budgets. SB 994 specifically extends reimbursement provisions with no sunset date, thereby ensuring counties are reimbursed for the special elections they hold. With this permanent authorization in place, counties will not have to continuously seek reimbursement through legislative measures. I strongly urge your aye vote on this important legislation and have with me today the sponsor of the bill, Los Angeles County, represented by the Los Angeles County Registrar Recorder, Clerk Dean Logan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and member. I want to thank you for hearing this bill today. I am Dean Logan. I'm the Registrar Recorder County Clerk for Los Angeles County. I want to thank Senator Price for sponsoring this bill and also want to indicate for the record that I'm also representing the California Association of Clerks and Election Officials who have a support position on this bill. Los Angeles County is the largest and most diverse election jurisdiction in the country. We serve more than 4 million registered voters across 4,000 square miles and an electorate larger than 38 of the 50 states in the Union. In the past decade, since 2000, Los Angeles County has conducted 10 of the 15 special vacancy elections called to fill legislative and congressional vacancies. However, in 5 of these elections, because no candidate received a majority of the vote, a second special runoff election was conducted, increasing the total number of elections, special vacancy elections conducted in Los Angeles County to 15, and that doesn't include the special election conducted just last week on April 13th to fill the vacancy in the 43rd Assembly District, another election where a second special runoff election will be necessary and conducted on June 8th. Special vacancy elections have exacted a cost of more than $12 million for Los Angeles County during this period, not including the additional estimated $1.8 million in costs for the 43rd Assembly District election that took place last week. However, as Senator Price has indicated, state reimbursement for these costs has totaled only $4.3 million, less than half of the actual cost of those elections. In 2009, Los Angeles County conducted 5 different elections to fill just 3 vacancies. Because no legislation has been enacted to authorize reimbursement for special vacancy elections that have occurred since 2008, the county currently has no recourse for recovering over $5 million in unanticipated and unbudgeted election costs. The cost of administering and preserving our democratic processes is a necessary expense, one that is invaluable to the future of California. But currently, these costs rest on the shoulders of individual counties. So on behalf of Los Angeles County and the California Association of Clerks and Election Officials, we ask your support for this legislation, and I'd be happy to respond to any questions.
Thank you.
Madam Chair and members, Paul Smith with the Regional Council of Rural Counties, representing the Boards of Supervisors of 31 rural counties. I'll just echo Senator Price's comments. These costs are unbudgeted. They come kind of just at you when you're comprising a budget and when you have to spend monies. We just believe this should be a state responsibility for funding. These are state offices in many respects, obviously congressional office as well, and we are in strong support of this bill.
Madam Chair, members, Jean Hurst on behalf of the California State Association of Counties. We concur with the comments previously. We urge your vote.
Juliana Voris with the Urban Counties Caucus in strong support of this bill. As the Senator said, this is a county general fund costs, and these budget times, we believe we should be reimbursed for what is a duty that we do on behalf of the state. Thank you.
Nicole Becker on behalf of Secretary of State Deborah Bowen in support of this measure. Just to clarify that the state will be repaying the congressional and legislative special sessions or special elections. Pardon me. Believe that all counties should be treated fairly with regards to reimbursement for costs of special elections. Thank you.
Madam Chair, Alan Fernandez on behalf of San Diego County in support of the bill.
Okay, are there others in support? Are there speakers in opposition to the bill? Seeing and hearing none, thank you, Senator Price. I think that we'll entertain a motion as soon as we have a quorum.
Thank you.
Senator Liu, do you want to?
Just a couple questions. You've limited the reimbursement by the state to the state offices plus Congress.
Yes.
So the counties are still paying for local elections. They charge the local school districts and things like that for their elections, don't they?
Yes, that's my understanding. Mr. Logan can provide some greater.
Yes, Senator, that's correct. The local jurisdictions that place measures on the ballot are billed for those election expenses.
So the way it happens today, that if you're holding these elections in your county, state elections in the county, there is a process by which the state is supposed to reimburse you, but it just hasn't?
There's previous legislation that authorized that reimbursement that is no longer enacted.
It's
been like a case
sunsetted in
2008. Did you ever get reimbursement, by the way, or was it always deferred?
We have received some. Again, we received $4.3 million of the nearly $12 million that we incurred in expenses.
And I understand that it just happens in the 43rd is part of my 21st Senate district, and I know that you're having 4 elections for the special plus the regular. You already had one last week. Then you'll have because no one received a majority plus one, so you'll have the runoff in June. Then you'll have another primary in June for the November election.
That's correct. There was a special primary for the vacancy last week. No one received a majority, so that goes to a runoff that'll be on the June 8th ballot as a special vacancy election with all candidates appearing on all ballots. And on that same election ballot is the primary for the regular term for the 43rd District that will then move to the November election.
And so the special only has 2 names on the ballot, the 2 that received the highest votes.
Right.
Correct? So the June ballot, might it have more names on the ballot?
That's correct, Senator. The June ballot, the position, the 43rd Assembly District will appear twice on that ballot, once as the vacancy runoff with 2 candidates, and then for the regular term, which will have the full slate of candidates. But in that case, it's a partisan primary, so the number of candidates will depend on which party ballot you're receiving in that election.
And how much do you anticipate this costing?
Well, the June 8th election is obviously it's our most complicated election anyway, and so it will be very expensive. I don't have a figure on that right now. Because it's consolidated onto that election, the actual cost for the vacancy part of that will not be as significant as last week's election because it's consolidated. But we do anticipate incurring some additional expenses just in terms of voter education and outreach to try and help voters understand why they're seeing that position on their ballot 2 times.
2 times, right. It's very confusing. It will be very confusing for folks. Thank you.
Okay. Again, thank you very much. And Senator Price, do you wish to present 1434?
Yes, I do, Madam Chair and members. I'm pleased to present Senate Bill 1434, which clarifies current law with respect to voter registration cards. Existing election law contains a number of rebuttable presumptions that election officials can make when a voter does not fill out certain information on a voter registration card. For example, if no middle name or initial is shown on the voter registration card, it's presumed that none exists. However, if a voter doesn't fill in their state or county of birth on the state voter registration card, current law requires county election officials to contact the voter before processing the voter registration card. As a result, some counties are using limited staff time and resources to obtain information that has no bearing on whether the person is eligible to register to vote. Furthermore, the federal voter registration form does not require a person to identify their state or county of birth. Since it's not a permanent requirement on the federal form, it's not used to determine a person's eligibility to register. There's really no need for it to be filled in on the state form. SB 1434 creates a rebuttable presumption that if a person doesn't identify their place of birth, it is presumed that they are eligible to register to vote as long as they marked the box stating that they are a citizen of the United States and signed the registration form under penalty of perjury. This bill is potentially a cost savings measure for the counties and is sponsored by the Secretary of State. I respectfully ask for your aye vote. Today I have with me a representative from the Secretary of State's office in support of this measure.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. Nicole Becker on behalf of the Secretary of State. We are the sponsors of this measure. Again, as the Senator eloquently laid out the bill, there are state and federal laws that require elections officials to accept the state and federal forms, but the federal forms, as State Senator Price shared, they do not have the require the place of state or country on their form. There are already rebuttable presumptions in law that do not require information that's not necessary in determining the eligibility of a person to register to vote. We ask that you support this measure. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there other speakers in support? Speakers in opposition? Any questions from the committee? Again, fine. Thank you very much. We'll entertain a motion when we have some more members.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
One of those days, as we say. Right. Thank you. I believe that Senator Samidian. Yeah. Welcome, Senator Samidian.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're presenting 1342.
Yes, ma'am. Ready to go?
Yes, ready to go.
Thank you. Madam Chair and members, this is, in my view, a good government bill. I think you will agree as well. It is designed to improve our polling place processes, and let me just give a brief bit of background because it will help tee up the question. You may or may not recall that under state law there is a firm limit of 1,000 voters in a precinct, and that's a firm cap. That firm limit of 1,000 voters might have made sense at a previous time when we were talking about real voters who were election day voters who walked into the polling place. But, of course, that's no longer the case. Today we have significant numbers of folks who are permanent vote by mail, PVBM as they're referred to. What that means is that on a statewide level, we're now up to 33% vote by mail. And in the area that I represent, the numbers are even higher. We are in Santa Clara County looking at something like, I want to say, 66% of our voters are permanent vote by mail. What does that lead to? Given the fact that there are disparate numbers of voters in different polling places, It means that you've got one polling place where the limit is 1,000, but there are 900 vote-by-mail folks and only 100 folks, 30% of whom show up and then trickle through the polling place while resources are wasted. On the other side of town or on the other side of the county, you've got a place where there are only 100 vote-by-mail voters, 900 real voters show up, and the place is packed and busy all day and people have to wait in line. Why is that? Again, it's because we've got this firm limit of 1,000 voters without regard to the number of real Election Day walk-in voters. There is a related question about which you're going to hear a little bit more in a minute from our witness, which is that there is a provision in state law that says when the size of a polling place falls below, or precinct falls below 250 actual voters, 250 registered voters, then there is no longer an obligation to provide a polling place. And at that point, if a registrar wishes to, he or she may say, I'm sorry, we have fewer than 250 registered voters, and therefore we're going to actually tell you you cannot vote in person on Election Day, and we're going to make you a vote-by-mail voter whether you want to be or not. The goal here is to allow for an adjustment which reflects the vote-by-mail propensity in a particular jurisdiction. It'll do two good things. It will allow for the even allocation of resources in the polling places, and it will discourage the practice of shrinking precincts down to below 250 so that they can be forced, quite frankly, to become vote by mail even when people don't want to do that. This issue was raised 3 years ago by one of my ought to be a law contest winners in my district. We did the bill. We got to yes in the legislature. It was the year of the gubernatorial generic vetoes, and we got a generic veto from the governor on this bill. This year, another constituent entered the ought to be a law contest, raised the issues again, and I said, you know what, it was a good bill back in 2007-8. I still think it's a good bill. Let me talk to the governor's office and see if they are open to reconsidering, given that it was a generic veto with no real problems on the contents of the bill. To their credit, the governor's office has said they are open to taking another look at this issue, particularly given the dramatic growth in the number of vote-by-mail voters. And for that reason, I have sitting next to me Lynn Silton, who's a resident of Palo Alto and who was one of 3 winners in this year's There Ought to Be a Law contest. So if I can introduce my witness.
Actually, we're going to call the roll because we do have a quorum.
Wonderful, thank you.
And then we'll hear from your witnesses.
Hancock?
Here.
Hancock here. Denham? Desaulniers? Liu? Here. Liu here. Strickland?
Here.
Strickland here.
Kim? Yes. The witnesses have no more than 2 minutes each.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I support Governor Simitian's Bill 1342, precinct sizes, and thank him for There Ought to Be a Law, a program which I think institutionalizes citizen participation, which I think is a great idea. I believe that we as citizens have a right to vote using a secret ballot. My neighborhood has been designated a vote-by-mail precinct due to the small number of voters not voting by mail. And here's why this is important to me. Few Americans doubt that free and fair elections are the heart of democracy. In considering which voting system best secures voters' trust, the issue of privacy of each citizen's vote is a major consideration. First, a vote by mail is signed and therefore is not secret. There is no way around this because there is a need to verify signatures and registration. And this opens votes up for various things that I think might be dangerous. One would be coercion of certain voters, perhaps people in care facilities or rebel family members. Also, buying a vote by mail is more practical because you can be sure that you got what you paid for. Also, once a mail-in ballot is cast, it can't be changed. And if there's a dramatic change in the reports on a candidate, and maybe you'd want to change that vote, you can't. And last, I believe no system is perfect, but the system least prone to raise the mistrust of the electorate is a secret ballot with a polling place. And I thank you for listening, and thank you and kudos to Senator Joe Simitian for building citizen participation into his method of doing business as an elected official. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there others in support?
Madam Chair and members, I'm Trudy Schaefer, representing the League of Women Voters of California in support of the bill. We believe that efficient and effective precinct operations are essential to protecting the right of citizens to vote. Many of our League members are, in fact, poll workers or at least poll monitors, and they strongly understand the need to have well-trained, efficient workings of the polls, and they believe that it's an onerous task at best, and at worst, it's made even worse when there are, for example, the crushes of many voters at one precinct, and then there may be precincts nearby at which there are very few voters. So we believe that for effective operation of the precincts, this is a good bill to have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Julian DeVorce with the Urban Counties Caucus, also in support. The Board of Supervisors in the urban counties are always looking ways to streamline and reduce costs, and this is one issue that has been raised in our board, and we were very pleased to see the bill introduced by Senator Simidian. I believe this provides counties flexibility to put the resources where they are the most best use, and for that reason, we're in strong support of the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in support? Are there speakers in opposition? Seeing and hearing none. Any questions from the committee? No. This is a good way of balancing precincts and expediting elections. Is there a motion? Okay, the bill's been moved. Please call the roll.
Senator, I'm sorry, Madam Chair. Could I offer just a brief close?
Yes, you can, but
short version. When I introduced this bill at first in 2007, I just want to say this out loud because it's important for absent members, and I hope their staffs will communicate. Democrats were worried it would somehow disadvantage them. Then Republicans were somehow worried it would disadvantage them. We worked those issues through in a language that is now before you. There is no reduction in the total commitment to provide precincts and polling places. The way the language is crafted, it simply allows for that to be evened out from precinct to precinct. The bill does nothing to either advantage or disadvantage the use of vote by mail, which I know is sometimes a concern. Rather, it simply says that that can be reflected in the allocation of resources, and it reduces the potential for people's precincts to be disappeared on them or their polling places to be disappeared on them as a result of this phenomenon. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Senator Simony. And I did assume that was your intent. And the person that submitted the idea may have had several ideas as to why she thought it was a good idea. Okay, all right. Please read the roll.
Hancock.
Aye.
Hancock, aye. Denham, Desaulniers, Liu. Liu, aye. Strickland.
Okay, the bill is on call.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair and members.
Will the sergeant please call authors? I'll have Senator Liu present now, but we need Senator Ashburn, Senator Desaulniers. Okay.
Do you want to wait for this, or you want to go ahead?
It's fine, I think, if you go ahead. Okay. Senator Liu.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This bill, SB 1102, lets counties conduct vote-by-mail elections to fill vacancies in Congress, the State Assembly, the State Senate. Voting by mail reduces costs, makes voting more efficient, and increases participation in the election process. I am offering an author's amendment to delete sections that preclude counties that they meet pre-clearance requirements of the Federal Voting Rights Act of 1965. This section is unnecessary. Supporters of the bill include the California Association of Clerks and Election Officials, California State Association of Counties, Regional Council of Rural Counties, and the Urban Counties Caucus. I recently received late opposition letters from two groups that my office has started dialogues with, and I understand we just received another letter of opposition about 3 hours ago, so we haven't had the time to go through the letter, but we will certainly engage them in the process of hearing their concerns and seeing if we can work out some of their issues. Special elections are costly and generate low turnout. The state has held 96 special elections since 1990 to fill vacancies in the Assembly, Senate, and Congress, nearly 5 special elections a year. 2 special elections last year, Los Angeles 26th Senate District and the 51st Assembly District, saw record low turnouts under 8%. In early 2010, polling place turnout barely reached 3% for an open assembly seat in Orange County. Standard primary and general elections can generate significant turnout and voter participation. Counties and the state should preserve their fiscal resources for such elections, and I ask for your aye vote on this measure.
Speakers in support of the measure? Yeah.
Hi, I'm Steve Weir, the County Clerk for Contra Costa County, and also representing CACEO. And with me is Kenny Lopez, our Assistant Registrar in Contra Costa. We think that this bill is about fiscal responsibility. During the decades of the 2000s, there were 25 special vacancy elections representing 15 seats, and interestingly enough, 13 of those were wholly contained within one county. However, there was less than 9% turnout at the polls on average for those, and during that decade, over half the voters already were voting by mail. In 2009, that was a very active year for us. We had 8 special vacancy elections representing 5 seats. The cost was $8.5 million. Had there been a vote-by-mail option exercise in each one of those, the savings would have been between $2 and $4 million, just under half. The average turnout in the 2009 had actually fallen to 18.6%, but the vote by mail had gone up to almost 2/3 of the voters. But the average turnout at the polls had fallen to 6.3%. And in the 3 elections that were referenced by the author, Senate District 26 had 3.3% turnout at the poll. Assembly District 51 had 2.55% turnout at the polls. And in the special January 12, 2010 election for District 72, less than 3% of the voters turned up at the polls to vote. And so we think that making this an option for the locals has a lot of positive aspects to it, and would certainly ask for your aye vote.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say on the special vacancy elections, the time periods are so compressed compared to a regular election that you can't send sample ballots out to tell voters where their polling place is going to be and give them the option to request a vote-by-mail ballot if the date's not convenient for them. You can't send that out until you know where your polling places are going to be and you know what your candidate list is going to be. We don't learn where the polling places are going to be until after we know where the election date is and we can secure those polling place locations. And the certified list of candidates doesn't come out until 36 days before the election. That gives us 1 week to print ballots and have them available, and to print sample ballots and get them in the mail to voters. This is 2 to 3 weeks later than they would normally get a sample ballot. And if they pay attention and look at that material when they first get it, it gives them a very short time to react and request a vote-by-mail ballot if they wish one. This could possibly be contributing to the low turnout at the polls, because by the time people realize that they'd like to vote by mail, it's too late. If we can do a vote-by-mail election and send them the ballot, then they have the option of either voting it or not. They can come to our office and vote if they so wish to vote in person and leave their ballot with us. They would be able to turn in their voted ballot to a drop-off location if they wish to do that rather than using the Postal Service.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, members, Jean Hurst on behalf of the California State Association of Counties. We think Senator Liu's measure is a common sense approach, particularly in these difficult economic times, allow us to save a little bit of money and hopefully help us to increase turnout in these historically low turnout elections. We urge your aye vote.
Julian DeVoris with the Urban Counties Caucus, also in support due to the cost-saving measure. The legislature is always asking for ways that we could streamline, and we believe this is also a common-sense measure in which counties could save money. Thank you.
Paul Smith with Regional Council of Rural Counties in strong support.
Alan Fernandez, again, on behalf of San Diego County in strong support. We agree with the analysis in that it increases voter participation and saves money. For those reasons, we urge your strong support.
Thank you. Others in support? Are there those in opposition that wish to speak?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm Santosh Siram Santana with Asian Americans for Civil Rights and Equality. ACRE is a joint partnership of 3 civil rights organizations, and we are opposed to Senator Liu's bill because vote-by-mail only election poses significant civil rights concerns because it would limit access, and it would be less inclusive than what we currently have right now. Under our current system, voters can access translated materials on Election Day, and without asking for them in advance. Also, voters, when they go to these polling places, they have access to bilingual poll workers at these polling places. So there is information and access for this population. SB 1102 dramatically reduces the number of places an individual can drop off their ballots and makes no provisions for bilingual poll workers. One of our main concerns is counties that are subject to the language access assistant provisions of the Federal Voting Rights Act would have a challenging time implementing a vote-by-mail only election. So Los Angeles County is required by the Federal Voting Rights Act to provide all election materials in 6 languages. How would LA County implement this bill if it was passed? In closing, much has been said and made about Oregon's vote-by-mail system. Oregon's vote-by-mail only system has been established since 1995 and has been studied widely. And one of the main things that each of these studies shows is that the Oregon's vote-only mail system is very good about turning out voters who have a high propensity to vote. Oregon's mail voting system is not effective in reaching registered non-voters, which I believe that's the population Senator Liu's bill is trying to reach. So as a civil rights organization, we share the same concerns as Ms. Liu regarding increasing civic participation. But when you reduce polling places, when you take them away, when you take away information, when you take away assistance, it actually decreases civic engagement for a protected class. And because of that, I ask for your no vote on this bill.
Marty Moto, California Disability Community Action Network. It's a nonpartisan network of people with disabilities, seniors, and mental health needs. For the reasons stated by the Asian Americans for Civil Rights and also by Disability Rights California, we were in opposition at this point. But we didn't have a chance to register our concerns directly with Senator Liu or her staff, and so out of courtesy to her, we'll be more than happy to do that in the coming weeks because she's always been responsive to the disability community, and her staff has always been responsive as well. So we're confident that will happen over the next coming weeks.
Thank you. Are there others in opposition? Seeing and hearing none, I actually have some questions. I don't know if you want to respond to the opposition, Senator Liu, before that.
Well, we're going to, excuse me, we're going to take their opposition, and I think we've already in conversation with some of the disability rights groups, and so we're going to look at their needs and see if we can come to some kind of accommodation in the bill as we move forward.
All right. Have you also spoken with Asians for Civil Rights?
I don't think have you been in our office? Okay. Okay. And I know NALO is a late opposition to happen today. So we will be in conversation with these folks.
Okay. Well,
trying to work out our differences.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. And let me say, I think that we're looking at 2 different kinds of goods here. I mean, one is that participation is abysmally low for almost everybody, protected classes and unprotected classes, in the special election process that we're having now, and that lower costs, when they can be achieved without a loss of equity, are very, very important right now, I think, for the state. I am not sure, but I believe that we took some amendments in the bill that I'll be presenting that may have eliminated your opposition, a public education campaign. No?
Are you talking about your voter runoff
the IRB bill?
Yeah, IRB bill, right.
Yes, he took our amendments. So did Mr. Ng. He took our amendments, but we were support if amended. That's a separate bill.
Okay, no, I know that.
Okay.
I just wondered how you felt about public education campaigns and that sort of thing being in a vote by mail
only.
By mail only,
Mm-hmm.
and then also the drop-off centers. Obviously, drop-off centers are highly consolidated because you'd have one for each 25,000 voters
Right.
instead of one for each 1,000 voters.
Right.
But nevertheless, there would be people there, and possibly with the inclusion of an amendment that would have the same encouragement for multiple languages being spoken at the polling place.
Correct.
We would support that.
This conversation with Senator Liu's office would be a collective conversation of the disability rights community, the
Right.
Latino community, and the Asian American community. As to voter education, with any change in any voting system, there has to be more than the minimal done. With instant runoff voting or all mail voting, there has to be a comprehensive approach to educating voters. Our concern, one of our main concerns, is the elimination of polling places. So if we're trying to increase people to vote, we're removing a method of how they vote. So I think that also has to be taken into consideration.
All right. Thank you. I mean, I do understand your concerns. Are there questions or comments from other members of the committee? Well, let me say that I will be voting to move the bill along today, but I strongly encourage the author and all the collective opposition to sit down and have some very serious meetings and see if we can't come up with something that helps everybody participate more and with full
We'd be happy to
information.
bring the bill back to you for your review prior to moving it to the floor.
That would be excellent. With that caveat, is there a motion on the bill?
I'll move it.
There are no questions or comments. Madam Secretary, would you read the roll?
Hancock.
Aye.
Hancock, aye. Denham.
No.
Desaunier.
Aye.
Desaunier. Denham, no. Desaunier, aye. Liu. Aye. Aye. Strickland.
Okay. Thank you, Senator Liu. Yeah. Senator DeSaulnier, would you like to? Oh, excuse me. Sit down, please. Senator Ashburn.
Below that rail.
Yeah.
But I'll move his bill.
Yes. All right. Senator Ashburn, presenting Bill 1118.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. This measure deals with the money in politics and the time in which dollars are received by those who make important decisions on behalf of the people of our state. There are a couple of times during the legislative year when dollars received are of particular concern because of the intensity of the work of the legislature in specific issues that may be included in the budget, and also the intensity of the activity that occurs at the end of the legislative session. And so in an effort to provide more disclosure and to provide more sunshine on who's giving and who's receiving, this bill would require 24-hour reporting of contributions in excess of $1,000 or more from from that period of the date of the May revision through the adoption of the budget, and then during that 15-day period of time at the conclusion of the legislative session. This reporting gives the public the opportunity to know the dollars that are flowing in the Capitol, coming from whom and to whom during times when decisions are being made that are very, very significant in the lives of Californians. So with this idea of more disclosure, more sunshine, sunshine being the ultimate disinfectant in politics, we offer this reform proposal to try to provide additional disclosure so that the people will understand who is receiving and from whom. There are amendments suggested in the committee's analysis, and I'm accepting all of those. The amendments specifically define the specific reporting dates at the beginning of the year, having a calendar set forth by the Fair Political Practices Commission. Will clarify that the bill only applies to entities while reporting with reporting requirements, and to remove any duplicate reporting requirements wherever possible. So those are the amendments that I will include as author's amendments and ask for your favorable consideration.
Right. And you're basically limiting the bill to committees that already are required to report online.
That's correct. That's the other amendment.
To the Secretary of State's office. Good. Do you have any speakers in support?
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. My name is Kirsten Kolpitke. I'm the Deputy Director of Legislation at the Governor's Office of Planning and Research. The Governor has consistently supported efforts to reduce the appearance of impropriety associated with the timing of budget negotiations and campaign contributions. In a number of public statements, he's noted that politicians operate in a money-in, favors-out atmosphere that diminishes public trust. In July of 2009, Rasmussen Reports conducted a survey of 1,000 likely voters regarding campaign contributions and special interests. They noted that 68% of voters believed it was more important to disclose the source of contributions than to limit contributions. In addition, likely voters thought it took less money to influence legislators now than they did in 2006. While money may be the mother's milk of politics, the legislature has the ability to restore some of the public's trust by simply enacting a 24-hour reporting period for donations of $1,000 or more during budget negotiations, before the end of session, and during the signing period of bills. This bill would give constituents and consumer rights groups disclosure from which they may draw their own conclusions. I ask for your aye vote.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in support? Are there speakers in opposition? I do have a question, Senator Ashburn. I'm very much in favor of disclosure, and do recognize that there are times of year when there seem to be more fundraisers and more interest on the part of the press also in how money is flowing. My concern with the bill is that you could end up simply changing the dates of fundraisers so they'd all be had the week before the May revise, actually, that would be the main one. Then you wouldn't have anything again till during the period that the governor is signing or toward the end of session. And as this bill moves forward, I'm wondering if you would consider an amendment that would just say in 3 years we would get a report from the Secretary of State to see if our disclosures went up or down, just to see if we can see how that's happening.
I appreciate the comment and the suggestion. I would have no objection to having Secretary of State or anyone else, a Fair Political Practices Commission, report back to the legislature on the impact of the bill. I'm not sure that either of those entities currently track the fundraising activities.
I think that's true. They don't know
when they are. In terms of the dates around which fundraisers are clustered. To me, the question, the timing of fundraisers held by the incumbent members of the legislature should not, I would think is totally coincidental And if they are clustered around those periods of the legislative calendar where the work is maybe more sensitive, more important, more intensive, then we ought to do everything we can to, again, heighten the reporting during those period of time. There's nothing in the bill that limits when fundraisers are scheduled. There's nothing in the bill that limits the contributions made or the receipt of those. And so it's only on the disclosure side. But if we could craft an amendment, as you're suggesting, that would provide a report back that would be meaningful in the timing of activities, I certainly would support that.
Yeah, I'm just realizing that I think I began to see this when I was looking at the analysis. And the Fair Political Practices Commission apparently can track that information because they get all the reports, and probably the Secretary of State can too, with the dates of the contributions. Again, there are some things that we can imagine happening that would make some of that a little fuzzy. But they say, for example, that more than 25% of all the fundraisers held are held in the periods of time that you want to look. Now, that's interesting, though, because that's a fairly substantial period of a month or so. Well, it's probably adds up to about a month and a half, and 25% of the fundraisers. Yeah, so it is disproportional. Yeah, well, do you have that? So,
Madam Chair, if I may.
A couple of months, yeah. Senator Denham?
You know, I think the issue with this bill is disclosure, just to show people the sunshine on who is donating during those critical times. As far as fundraisers, I mean, I would assume that the majority of all of the legislature does 3 a year. One in the end of the first quarter, one at the end of the second quarter, and one at the end of the third quarter. Now, coincidentally, that's just happens to run when our committees run, and that happens to run when our budget runs, and then when we come back for the fall. But that's also trying to plan, you know, it takes a couple months to throw a fundraiser. And so if you get here in January, 3 months later, all of the fundraisers start. 3 months after that is when you can actually get your second one accomplished, and then we're gone. Hopefully we're gone, and then coming back in August. So, I mean, I would assume that any study is going to show us those numbers, unless what we're actually trying to address is the district fundraisers.
Well, there's no specification of to which event a contribution is made, or any event. Again, it's who donated and to whom, and of course the date of the check is the operative date that is tracked by the Fair Political Practices Commission. There's just no doubt that during budget time, people who have a keen interest in what takes place in the legislature on behalf of the public, many of those people are donating. And at the end of the legislative session, when important measures are pending, that people make contributions during that period of time. The earlier thought had been to limit the contributions from being made and received. However, because of the First Amendment right that people have to express themselves in our political process, you can't really set that right on a calendar, but we certainly can say that if the contribution is made and received during these critical period of time, it's going to be reported, and it's going to be reported right now. And that's what the bill does. And again, Madam Chair, I'll work with you in crafting language for Secretary of State or for FPPC to report back.
Right, because I'm happy to see the bill move forward right now because it could lead to more complete disclosure. I would just note that in the past we've had troubles with bills like this on the theory that it just moves fundraisers a couple of days so that people, don't have to do it. But thank you.
Thank you.
With that, are there questions or comments from other members of the committee, or is there a motion on the bill? Motion on the bill? Okay.
Kind of late over there.
Yeah.
I moved it when you walked up.
Oh.
I'll withdraw my motion.
Oh, no. Okay. All right. Senator Denham has made the motion. Madam Secretary, would you read the roll, please?
Hancock.
Aye.
Hancock, aye. Denham.
Aye.
Denham, aye. Desaulnier. Desaulnier, aye. Lou. Lou, aye. Strickland.
Okay. I thank you. I need to go and present a bill right now in transportation. I'll be right back. It should be short. Senator.
It'd be Dennis.
Want to make sure we didn't miss another short senator.
Mr. Chairman, I'm here to present SB 1202. It's a transparency, sunshine, and disclosure to the initiative process. It's fairly simple. 1202 would require that the Secretary of State's office include the top 5 contributors to a ballot measures passage in the ballot pamphlet supplied to the voters by the Secretary of State. They would do this, Secretary of State would do this 110 days before the election. They actually prepare the ballot pamphlet 85 days before. Particularly since the initiative process is being used so much now, I think it's all the more important that people understand where the money's coming from. Welcome back, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
How'd the bill go? That was really quick.
It was a false alarm, according to my staff.
And I just close by reading a quote from a recent LA Times story that George Skelton did about a particular initiative that we're seeing lots of TV ads about right now. And he ends his comment on that initiative, Prop 16, I believe, by just saying, for voters, this should be simple. Ignore the TV ads and all the slate mailers and follow the money. There they'll find who stands to benefit, and that's the purpose of 1202. With that, I would ask for your aye vote.
Thank you very much. Are there speakers in support? Speakers in opposition? See, the bill has been moved. Would you like to close, Senator Desaulnier?
I'd ask for your aye vote.
Madam Secretary, please read the roll.
Hancock.
Aye.
Hancock, aye. Denham.
No.
Denham, no. Desaulnier.
Aye.
Desaulnier, aye. Lou. Aye. Lou, aye. Strickland. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll hold the roll open in case Senator Strickland or whomever is in or out of the meeting wants to add on. Is there a motion on the consent calendar? We have one item on the consent calendar by Senator Romero. Okay, the consent calendar has been moved. Please read the roll.
Hancock.
Aye.
Hancock, aye. Denham.
Aye.
Denham, aye. Desaulnier.
Aye.
Desaulnier, aye. Lou. Aye. Lou, aye. Strickland.
Okay, thank you. Senator Denham, could you take the gavel back? Members, I'd like to begin by thanking the Secretary of State's office, Asian Americans for Civil Rights and Equity, and the New America Foundation for working with my staff and me to address various concerns that were raised about this bill. The amendments I'm taking are outlined in the sheet I handed out. Did that get handed out, committee staff? Yeah. The amendments resolve the concerns related to voter education and understanding, vote tallying, the elimination of write-in candidates, and authorizing the statute to be overridden by the Secretary of State. We will continue to work with the Secretary of State's office as the bill moves forward to make sure that that all of this proceeds in the way that's laid out, that results in a bill that is not only desirable but eminently workable. SB 1346 gives California counties the option of using instant runoff voting in special elections to fill vacancies. This could save the taxpayers up to $3 million per special election. Since the passage of Proposition 140, legislative term limits, there's been an average of almost 5 special elections annually. California voters and taxpayers are barraged by 2-round special elections to fill vacancies, a primary generally followed by a runoff. Recently, legislative seats, for example, held by Mike DeVal, Paul Krikorian, and John Benoit have all become vacant. Very few voters, as we discussed in Ms. Liu's bill, turn out for these 2-round special elections, and they are very expensive and charge a deep toll on our tax dollars during a time when we need to use every dollar wisely. SB 1346 will do away with costly runoff elections when filling vacancies by allowing voters to vote the first time to elect a majority voter winner with the IRV. And many of you know how IRV elections work. They've been working in San Francisco, and they have been adopted in a number of other cities. It is where voters rank their choices 1, 2, and 3, and the rankings are then used to determine a majority winner by the lowest person dropping off, the lowest vote getter, and their second, people who voted for that person for their first vote, their second and third votes then get tallied until there is a winner with majority votes. Now, a county will have to decide in advance that it wishes to use IRV as a way of filling special election vacancies. It is one of the amendments that we took to address some of the concerns. They will undertake a public education campaign if they decide to do that, and also have ways of working with other counties should it be an election in which there are 2 or more counties involved. Since it's entirely voluntary, counties may or may not wish to undertake this. But for the counties that have indicated they're very interested in this, it will be an option. And with me today is yes, thank you. We only spent hours yesterday working together from the New American Foundation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, we'd like to thank you for introducing SB 1346. This is an important piece of legislation that will provide much-needed relief to our state's voters, taxpayers, and all 58 counties. Currently, as we've heard from proponents of the other 2 bills before us, we fill midterm vacancies using a 2-round special election system. And here's the problem with it. For one thing, they drain millions in taxpayer dollars. This is at a time of a vicious economic downturn. For another, a few voters actually vote in these elections. As you heard before, in last year for Senate Districts 26 and Assembly District 51, less than 8% of people turned out. And we did the math for the Senate District 26 election. That came out to be over $100 per voter. Adding insult to injury, our 2-round special election system deprives communities of representation in Sacramento and Washington, D.C. for half a year. For example, months after Senator Benoit and Assemblymember Krikorian resigned, their seats are still vacant. Those vacancies have not been filled. This problem is not going away. As the Secretary of State noted, that we've had an average of 4.8 special elections in the last 20 years, and it appears that one more special election will be coming in Riverside County for that assembly district as well, down in a few months' time. Instant runoff voting is a common sense solution to this problem. As the Madam Chair mentioned, it allows voters to rank their top 3 choices and to elect a majority winner in one election, not 2. It would save up to $2 million per special election. Currently, cities that have adopted IRV include Oakland, San Francisco, Berkeley, Memphis, Minneapolis. It's also used in Ireland and Australia. Strong supporters of IRV include a number of groups, and in particular for this bill, the LA Area Chamber of Commerce, Californians for Electoral Equality, that is CFER. You have and you have the Asian American Action Fund as well, and there'll be another speaker, I understand, as well. And finally, I'd like to point out the strong record that instant runoff voting has with communities of color. In San Francisco, they've been using IRV since 2004. And after that was introduced, San Francisco now has the most diverse Board of Supervisors it's ever had in its history. Furthermore, right after IRV was introduced, in exit polls, it showed that 90% of Latino voters understood IRV, 86% of Asian American voters understood IRV, and 85% of African American voters understood IRV. In a nutshell, IRV boosted voter participation in the city, especially in the city's most diverse socioeconomic neighborhoods. With that, we would urge the committee to support this important bill, and we thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Just stay right there. You have to say others in support.
Others in support? I was taken back by one of the statements that you made. San Francisco has now the most diversity historically. What did you say again?
The greatest diversity on its Board of Supervisors in its history.
Multiple political parties?
No, in terms of ethnicity and race.
Thank you. Witnesses in opposition?
But I would note that Memphis, which is not known to be that liberal, has also adopted instant runoff voting. This is something that people across the spectrum have taken a good look at.
Nicole Becker from Secretary of State Deborah Bowen. We have concerns. First, would like to thank Senator Hancock for including us in ongoing discussions with yourself and the sponsor. And the Secretary is very supportive of the concept of IRV. However, pardon me?
It's time for opposition.
I'm just clarifying that we're not opposed, but we have concerns. With the amendments that were presented in committee, we still, some of our concerns, previous concerns were addressed, but we still have a few concerns, mainly with the voter education component. We do like the language that was included with regards to the providing other languages. However, we are concerned with there's adequate time frame with regards to conducting the education campaign, even if there is pre-approval. Secondly, it is our understanding that the Second Amendment will address the vote tallying. However, we do have significant concerns because, again, we do not know how or what criteria needs to be met in order for the vote tallying to occur in multi-jurisdictions. And finally, with regards to the pre-approval, potentially could additionally require the Secretary of State's office to review up to up to 173 plans with regards to the Board of Supervisors, and if possibly subsequent plans should changes be made. That being said, we are definitely willing and happy to continue the discussions as the bill moves forward with you, Senator Hancock, and the sponsors. And thank you very much for including us in the beginning and as the bill moves forward.
Thank you. Questions from members? Bill's moved. Call roll. Did you want to close?
Well, I would just close by saying, again, reminding members this is a permissive bill. Right now, there are relatively few cities and 2 counties, Alameda County and San Francisco County, who have expressed, and LA County in IRV. And so I don't think anybody's going to be inundated with projects on this, but I think we will have a chance to try it out. And we have everything to gain by having it work. And I thank the Secretary of State's office, as I said, New America Foundation, and the Asian Americans for Civil Rights and Equity for working with me. I intend to keep working with them, and hopefully we will resolve all concerns, and would ask for your aye vote to move the bill along.
Hancock?
Aye.
Hancock, aye. Denham?
No.
Denham, no. Desaulnier? Desaulnier, aye. Lou? Lou, aye. Strickland?
No.
Strickland, no.
That measure passes on a 4-1 vote. 3-2 vote.
You want me to change my vote?
I believe.
You got everything else?
Senator Denham, if you would continue to preside, I do have to go now and present a bill. Transportation.
The first item 1, SB 994. The bill has been moved. Call the roll.
Hancock?
Aye.
Hancock, aye. Denham?
Aye.
Denham, aye. Desaulnier? Desaulnier, aye. Lou? Lou, aye. Strickland?
Aye.
Aye.
And we also need to move.
Item number 8, SB 1434. Bill's been moved. Call the roll.
Hancock?
Aye.
Hancock, aye. Denham?
No.
Denham, no. Desaulnier? Desaulnier, aye. Lou? Lou, aye. Strickland?
No.
Strickland, no. That measure passed.
Call the absent members on the consent calendar.
Strickland?
Aye.
Strickland, aye. Okay.
Call the absent members on SB 1202, item 4.
Strickland?
Oh, no.
Strickland, no.
Open the roll on SB 1118.
Strickland?
Item 3.
Aye.
Strickland, aye. That measure passes.
We actually haven't voted on submitting a bill. We haven't voted on it. Strickland's going to go ahead.
And open the roll on SB 1342, item 6.
1340. Denham? I didn't get your vote right.
I'm voting.
That was you.
Just didn't actually want to say it out loud.
The submitting bill.
Denham?
I'm not voting on that.
Okay. Desaulnier?
Aye.
Desaulnier, aye. Strickland?
I would just like to make a statement before I vote. I've talked to the author of the bill, and he's agreed to work on some of the concerns that our committee staff has. Moving forward, I reserve the right to vote no on the floor, but in the meantime, I trust that Senator Simonian will work with our staff, and so therefore I'm voting for the bill. Aye.
Strickland, aye. Item 2, 1102. Strickland has not voted.
No.
You
Open
have
the
to call.
roll on SB 1102, please.
Strickland?
No.
No. That measure passes.
That measure passes.
That's it.
And that's it? Yeah.
That concludes the Elections Committee hearing.